At 91 years old, I discovered something painful about my children. They only come to see me because of the inheritance. And do you know what surprised me the most? I felt relief. People believe the worst thing that can happen to a mother is being abandoned by her children. That isn't true. The worst thing is living your entire life believing you have a loving family, when in reality you only have people waiting quietly for you to die. May 15th, 2023. Mother's Day. 91 years old. No calls, no messages, no visits. That was the day I decided to do something I'm still a little ashamed of today. But strangely enough, it gave me back my peace of mind. I spread the news that I was going to sell my house and donate the money to the church. 3 days later, after almost 2 years of silence, my children suddenly appeared at my door. If you are over 60 and sometimes feel invisible to your own family, stay here with me for a moment. This story might belong to you as much as it belongs to me. Leave a comment if you've ever discovered a truth about your family that you wish you had never known. Because sometimes the truth hurts less than the lie we tell ourselves. For most of my life, I believed I had been a good mother, a real one. The kind of mother who works long hours, wakes up before sunrise, washes clothes late into the night, and makes sure nothing is missing at home. After my husband Robert died, I raised my daughter Susan by myself. I worked at 2 schools just to keep everything running. When Susan married Michael and moved to another part of the city, I used to tell the neighbors with pride, "My daughter is very busy these days, but she loves me dearly." The truth is, I was lying, mostly to myself. I still remember Sundays in the 1990s. I had a round glass table in the dining room that I polished every week until it shined like a mirror. The smell of roast chicken would float out of the kitchen early in the morning, chairs scraping across the floor, people talking over each other, laughter filling the house. Susan used to arrive carrying dessert, and Michael would joke about how much food I made. Sometimes little Ava, Emily's daughter from next door, would run in with Noah behind her, asking if they could have some cake. The house felt alive. Plates clinking, loud laughter, small arguments about football games on television. I stood there in the middle of it all, serving more food, filling glasses, listening to everyone talk about their week. Back then, I believed something with absolute certainty. This will last forever. I thought I had built a real family, different from the one I grew up with. My own mother died alone in a small house that smelled like medicine and sadness. I promised myself that would never be my story. How naive I was. Years passed quietly, the way aging does, slowly enough that you don't notice it until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize the face staring back. The visits became less frequent. Sundays grew quieter. But I continued setting the table for 4 people. I kept buying groceries as if the whole family might walk through the door any minute. The last Christmas we spent together was in 2018. I remember clearly because Susan brought a new coat for me and Michael kept checking his phone during dinner. They arrived late and seemed in a hurry from the moment they walked in. During the meal, everyone kept looking at their phones. Michael left early because he said he had work in the morning. Susan followed shortly after dessert. She didn't even stay for coffee. I stood alone in the kitchen washing the dishes. The farofa sat untouched on the plates. Nobody asked for seconds. Through the wall, I could hear the neighbor's television. And I told myself, "They're busy. That's normal. At least they came." Another lie. The worst moment came on my 85th birthday in 2021. I woke up early that morning. I cleaned the house, combed my hair, and went to the bakery to buy a chocolate cake. The kind with shiny frosting that comes in a white cardboard box. I placed it on the living room table and waited. 3 o'clock. Nothing. 4 o'clock. Nothing. By 5, I couldn't stand the silence anymore, so I called Susan. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry," she said quickly. "I completely forgot. I'm busy right now. I'll call you later." Click. Later never came. I sat at the table with that overly sweet cake and the quiet house around me. And I told myself again, they have their own lives. But inside me, something had begun to crack, like a small fracture in a wall that you pretend not to see, until the entire structure collapses. Things slowly became worse after that birthday, but I kept pretending everything was normal. You know that feeling when you sense something is wrong, but you smile anyway? That was my life. I became very good at inventing excuses. The neighbor down the hall, Mrs. Celia, always asked about my daughter. "And Susan, is she doing well?" "Oh, yes," I would say with a smile. "She's very busy these days. Work, you know." The coffee cooled in my cup while I told stories I had invented. The truth was, I didn't know anything about Susan's life anymore. I didn't know how her job was going. I didn't know where Michael worked now. And if I admitted that truth, I would become that poor, abandoned old woman in the building. So I preferred the lie. I even created strange little rituals to keep hope alive. Every morning I cleaned the old telephone in my living room with a cloth and alcohol. It's one of those heavy table phones from the 1980s. I polished it carefully, as if dust were the reason it never rang. Sunday became the hardest day of the week. I woke early and cooked lunch for 4 people. 4 plates, 4 glasses, napkins folded perfectly, the pressure cooker hissing in the kitchen. Enough rice to feed a small army. And then I waited. No one came. At 2 in the afternoon, I would finally eat alone and store the rest in the refrigerator. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I ate the same leftovers until they were gone. But I couldn't stop preparing the meals, because stopping would mean admitting that I had given up. And mothers are not supposed to give up. Another lie we tell ourselves. One night in 2022, I couldn't sleep. Susan had given me a smartphone the previous Christmas, so I opened Facebook out of curiosity. And that's when I saw something that stayed like a bitter taste in my mouth for days. It was a birthday party, a beautiful cake, colorful candles, a house full of people smiling. It was my grandson Noah's birthday. I didn't even know it was happening. No one invited me. No one told me. I stared at the glowing screen in the dark bedroom, looking through photo after photo. I recognized some faces, friends, family members. Even Emily and her daughter Ava were there. But I, the grandmother, was missing. That was the first time I felt real anger, not sadness disguised as understanding. Real anger, a hot feeling rising from my chest to my throat. Still. I continued pretending everything was fine. Until Mother's Day in 2023 arrived, May 15th, the day everything changed. I woke up at 6 in the morning. I showered, put on perfume, and wore my navy blue dress, the one I used to save for special occasions. I cleaned the house from top to bottom. I even watered the balcony plants twice. Then I went to the bakery and bought 3 trays of brigadeiros. Susan always loved brigadeiros. I placed them neatly on the living room table and waited. 9 o'clock. Nothing. 10 o'clock. Nothing. Noon. Nothing. 2 in the afternoon, I called Susan. Voicemail. I called again. No answer. By 6 in the evening, the house was silent, except for the refrigerator humming and the neighbor's television through the wall. The brigadeiros had started to melt slightly in the heat. The sweet smell made me feel nauseous. And that was the moment everything inside me finally broke, like a glass falling on the floor. Sharp. Final. I had raised Susan alone after Robert died. I worked endlessly to give her a good life, and on Mother's Day, not even a message. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Then an idea appeared. A terrible idea. But it made my eyes shine in the dark. At 3 a.m, I picked up my phone. My hands trembled as I typed the message. Susan, I've decided to sell the house and donate the money to the church. I sent it. The next morning at 6:30, the phone rang. Susan sounded panicked. Mom, what are you talking about? Why would you sell the house? 3 days later, she and Michael were standing at my door. After 2 years of silence. 3 days. That's how long it took for the inheritance to bring them back. And strangely, I felt lighter knowing the truth. Now they visit more often. Susan calls to ask about my health. Michael suddenly cares about the house. But now I understand the reason, and strangely enough, that truth hurts less than the illusion I lived with for years. I know something today that took me 91 years to understand. The most painful loneliness is not living alone. It's believing you are loved when you are actually forgotten. Now the silence in my house is different. It is not abandonment, it is clarity, and clarity, even when it is bitter, brings a strange kind of peace.